theme of this is the ongoing war between us and them. Us and them. And it's not really a war, it's more like a game. And I want y'all, before I get started, to understand that this is how the game is played. The game is played in their hometown, in their stadium, on their field, with their fans, with their rule book, and their referees. And we've got to suit up and somehow compete against that. And it's very, very difficult. They control the media, they control everything. And so when it comes to something like this, you can't just make good points and win. You have to cram it down their throats. You can't just take no for an answer. Here's the key. Everything has a FOXP2. Everything has a form of FOXP2. That's what Earth life is like, and apparently life elsewhere as well. FOXP2, you have to have these master genes that control these suites of activity. And as you see in the human, if this is it, this is how all humans are, just like this. You look at the Starchild and you see, how many reds you think are there? How many differences do you think are in the Starchild? Next slide. And we'll make it easy on you. 56! 56! In humans, chimps, gorillas, it's just 0, none allowed. And then you get a rhesus monkey, you get 2 differences. A mouse, 20, a dog, 27, elephant, 21, possum, 21, frog, 26. 56! 56 differences in 211. If you extrapolate it out, you're going to get over 700, plus or minus 700 differences in the Starchild's FOXP2 gene. When none are allowed on Earth among humans. None are allowed. Okay? Now let's put this in perspective. Let's put this in perspective. Humans on Earth have an area code here in England. Neanderthals have an area code in Japan. Denisova have an area code in the States. The area code of the Starchild is the moon! The moon! You all know Sitchin's last book, right? Sitchin died in October of 2010, and he wrote a book right at the end. And he said he believed that one of the bodies taken out of Ur, I think it was, in the tombs of Ur, was the princess, he thinks, an Anunnaki princess named Puabi, P-U-apostrophe-A-B-I. And he believed her body as the queen. She was called the queen by those that discovered the bodies. There was a king and there was a queen, and she was in queenly-like regalia. She's the one that when you see her face, she's got this like big wad of black hair on her head, horsehair, with this crown over her head, and the argument was that was her head, you know, would have fit, you know, but anyway, Sitchin said, I think that she's a full-blooded Anunnaki princess in the sense that her mitochondrial DNA, that she came down the female line, and if you could get her mitochondrial DNA, that you would see Anunnaki mitochondrial DNA. This is a great thing to have. And her body supposedly is held at the British Museum, down in the bottom, with a lot of other bodies. There's like 120 bodies found in that tomb, I think they said. Anyway, so when Sitchin died, that was like his last request, and he talks about it in the book and all that. And in the States, I knew him pretty well, and members of the Sitchin group. I was coming over here a couple years ago to do a lecture series like I'm doing, and they asked me to go talk to him about it. And the woman mentioned in the book is named Margaret Clegg. She is the head of the Ancient Bones department there at the museum. So they asked me to go talk to her and see what we could, you know, could it be done? Could we get a sample of her body and her bones rather, and test it? So when I showed up to do that, she says, "Oh yes, please come, because all these Sitchin people are bombing us with emails saying, why don't you do, why won't you do this? Why won't you do this? Why won't you do this?" And she said, "Please explain to them that we have protocols here that we have to follow. we're not dodging this, but you have to come to us with qualified PhDs who are willing to do the work and willing to put their names on it and do all this. That's not easy to do. That is not easy to get. So the Sitchin family did find a geneticist from Copenhagen named Eske Willerslev, and who got a sample and who is supposed to be working on it. But the problem is this: no matter what result he gets, unless it's radically different from human, you don't know if it's human, part human, whatever. As long as it falls under 120 in the mitochondrial DNA, we aren't going to really know. And the thing is, as Margaret Clegg told me before our meeting, when she went down there to look at her body, she read what Sitchin wrote in his book. Then she went to the actual original notes of the guys really finding it. There is a difference between what the finder says and what the analysis guy says. There's a difference. And what Margaret Clegg, and one of the things they said was that her head was bigger than a normal human head. And Margaret Clegg said, I've looked at it, it doesn't look that much bigger to me. And it's all crushed up. It's all like something fell on it in the tomb. And on top of that, it's 120 bodies. You don't even know if that's actually the right one. It could be in any kind. So when I talked to Eske and the team there in Copenhagen about it, they came to New York and we had a meeting about it and filmed some footage for a show they were doing on it. I said, you guys have got a really uphill climb here with this thing to prove everything is right. I know, because with the Starchild, all that you see just doesn't count. So when you start adding these layers of difficulty in for them, they've got a real uphill swim to get this done. But nonetheless, daughters of man, I mean, it goes right back to that. If she is indeed one of the Anunnaki princesses, then you will be able to tell the difference, should be able to tell the difference between her and the daughters of man.
Lloyd, I'm a firm believer that the ruling families, like the royal family, are alien human hybrid. And one of the points you made were when the sperm goes into the egg, there's 23 chromosomes from the mother.
Right.
And it's important that the egg's there and that your lineage through your mother's side is prevalent in the egg. Is this why the royal family is so prevalent in their genealogy through the woman's side and not the man's side? And did they know thousands of years ago that they actually came from aliens?
Well, I don't know that, and I can tell you that that is a very, very easy thing to solve. Because as you've seen with just the little bit of genetics I've taught you here today, all you have to do is take a sample of their blood, pull out their mitochondrial DNA, and if they have less than 120 differences, and understand, I could have made that more clear, those 120 differences that we have, that's a maximum, a maximum. The oldest of us from southern Africa, the first humans, as they found out when they did the mitochondrial studies, and as Sitchin wrote in 1976, southern Africa, they were created in the Abzu in southern Africa. Exactly what Sitchin says, 15 years later they prove it out to be correct. So those are where the 120s are found. All of us sitting in this room, we have 60, 70, 80, something like that, depending on which haplogroup we belong to. You with me? So all you have to do is take the royal family's blood and check their mitochondrial DNA, and if they fall in under 120, then that's standard, typical human. If they fall outside 120, then, of course, you have a really big news story. So the question you have to ask yourself is, you know how you can get a fingerprint by getting somebody to take a drink and they leave the fingerprint on the glass? How do you get them to prick their finger and you steal their blood? I don't know, but if you can figure it out, you better throw it. Give it to John Grisham or somebody like that.
That's your next mission, Frankie.
When you look on the, I call it Wikipedia, when you look on Wikipedia website about me or the Starchild, there have been just nothing but lies and distortions from the very beginning. From the very beginning. And so I was, of course, as anybody would be, very irate that they would do that. What I didn't know, you think it's the People's Encyclopedia and everybody can change it and make it right and do all that. That isn't true. If you want to learn about horseshoeing, you're going to read something done by a guy that knows how to horseshoe, and you can pretty well, that's it. Anything the scientific mainstream doesn't care about, it's a pretty good tool. It really is. Anything to do with alternative knowledge, anything at all, there are graduate students in various parts of the world who are monitoring those sites, and those sites are on their computers, and whenever there is a change, a single change of a word, they are notified, and they will go back in, and if the change isn't to their liking, they will change it back. All right? So I didn't know any of this, so I got on, man, I was very irate, and I was calling people left and right, and I finally got to one of the honchos down in Miami, one of the top guys, and I said, look, all this is wrong. You don't even have my date, my hometown right of where I was born. And he says, Mr. Pye, you are the very last person in the world that we would trust to say the truth about yourself. It's true. I'm telling you what the man told me. You're the last person in the world that we would believe about yourself. Because, you know, obviously they think I'm going to just, you know, aggrandize and say that I was born on, you know, Saturn or something instead of where I was born. But now, the truth of it is, and I got this not too long ago, and I don't even think you know this, a guy contacted me, one of us, who really knows the Wikipedia system, and he says, I went in, he says, one thing about Wikipedia is they track everything. They track every change, it's all there. He says, I went in to take a look, because I'd heard you on the radio, and I didn't believe it. And I found that there have been as many back and forth changes on the Starchild page, as many pro people trying to make positive changes, and as many turnarounds from the Wikipedia staff as the page of George W. Bush, ex-President George W. Bush. Now, if you want to be in the company of bozos, that's good company. Of controversial people, that is good company. And I was really impressed by it, and I'm proud of that. You know, even though I had nothing to do with it, I think that's cool. So a lot of the theme of this is the ongoing. War between us and them. And it's not really a war, it's more like a game. And I want y'all, before I get started, to understand that this is how the game is played. The game is played in their hometown, in their stadium. So when it comes to something like this, you can't just make good points and win. You have to cram it down their throats. You can't just take no for an answer. On their field, with their fans, with their rule book, and their referees. And we've got to suit up and somehow compete against that. And it's very, very difficult. They control the media, they control everything.